Welcome back, explorers of consciousness, travelers of the inner cosmos. Here in this gentle space we've created together, away from the noise and urgency of the world, we continue our journey into the most profound mystery of human existence. Take a deep breath with me. Let your shoulders drop. Feel yourself settling into this moment, this exploration that asks nothing of you except your willingness to wonder. Today, we arrive at the final piece of a puzzle that has been assembling itself across our journey together. You've walked with me through the treacherous landscape of the want trap, where we discovered that desperate desire becomes the very force that repels what we seek. You've witnessed the startling revelation of mental suicide, understanding how every thought about what you want commits quantum murder in the field of infinite possibility. You've experienced the unsettling death of the identity assassin, that false self that masquerades as you while blocking every manifestation you attempt. Now, in this sacred space, we share something extraordinary is about to unfold. We stand at the threshold of the observation effect, where the most counterintuitive truth of manifestation reveals itself. This isn't just another technique to add to your collection. This isn't another strategy to practice and perfect. This is the dissolution of everything you thought you knew about creating reality, replaced by something so simple, so effortless, so natural that it will challenge every fiber of your being that has been trained to struggle and strive. The question that haunts us today cuts deeper than any we've explored. How can watching without wanting, observing without agenda, and being nobody create everything you've ever dreamed of faster than any technique ever could? This paradox sits at the heart of quantum mechanics, at the core of ancient wisdom traditions, and in the very mechanism by which reality assembles itself moment by moment. But here's what makes this exploration so crucial, so urgent, so necessary for your journey. Every moment you spend trying to manifest from the space of being somebody who wants, somebody who needs, somebody who lacks, is a moment spent in quantum interference. Your very presence as a wanter, a needer, a lacker, collapses the wave of infinite possibility into the particle of current limitation. The observation effect we're about to explore isn't passive watching. It's not meditation as you might understand it. It's not mindfulness as taught in popular culture. This is something far more radical, far more transformative, far more dangerous to your current sense of self. This is the state where you become transparent to reality itself, where the universe no longer encounters resistance in the form of your personality, your history, your story of limitation. Consider this carefully. In quantum physics, the observer effect demonstrates that the mere act of observation changes the behavior of subatomic particles. An electron exists in a state of quantum superposition, all possibilities simultaneously, until the moment it's observed. Then it collapses into a specific state, a specific reality. But here's the twist that modern science barely whispers about. The quality of the observer determines the quality of the collapse. When you observe from the space of wanting, you collapse possibilities into more wanting. When you observe from the space of lacking, you collapse possibilities into more lack. When you observe from the space of being somebody with a story, you collapse possibilities into more of that same story. But when you observe from the space of nobody, from pure awareness itself, reality has no resistance to overcome, no preset pattern to follow, no limitation to maintain. This is where manifestation becomes as natural as breathing, as effortless as the heartbeat you never consciously control, as automatic as the healing that happens in your body without your management. But to reach this state, everything you think you are must die, not metaphorically, not symbolically. Actually, tonight, we're going to witness this death together. We're going to explore what remains when the somebody disappears, what functions when the ego goes offline, what creates when there's nobody there to create. And we're going to discover that this nothing space, this void of identity, is actually the womb of all manifestation. The journey we're taking requires tremendous courage, because you will discover that the you that started watching this video doesn't actually exist. You'll realize that the observer of your thoughts is not you. You'll understand that the witness of your desires is not you. You'll see that the awareness in which all experience appears is not personal, not yours, not anything that can be contained in the story of a someone. This revelation will shatter every technique you've ever learned about manifestation, because techniques require someone to practice them. It will dissolve every method you've collected, because methods require an entity to apply them. It will eliminate every strategy you've developed, because strategies require a strategist. What remains is pure observation. Consciousness itself, awareness without content, the space in which all experience appears. And this space, this nothing that is everything, is the only true manifester. Not you, not your higher self, not your subconscious mind, pure awareness itself, expressing as the eternal dance of creation. But here's the terror and the wonder of what we're about to explore. Once you see this, once you experience this, once you know this directly, you can never return to the comfort of believing you are a somebody who manifests. You'll be forever launched into a reality where manifestation happens through you, as you, but never by you. So as we prepare to witness the observation effect in all its terrifying beauty, know that you're about to transcend the gravity well of human identity and achieve escape velocity into something vast, something unknown, something that your mind cannot grasp, but your being recognizes as home. Are you ready to become nobody and discover that nobody is everything? Why does desperately wanting something guarantee you'll never have it, while people who don't care seem to manifest effortlessly? This question reveals the first crack in everything you've been taught about manifestation. Right now, there's something you want desperately. Maybe it's money, maybe love, maybe success, maybe freedom from a situation that's consuming your life. And right now, that desperate wanting is the very force creating the energetic wall between you and what you desire. The want trap isn't psychological advice or spiritual philosophy. It's quantum mechanics operating in your daily life. Every time you generate the frequency of wanting, you're broadcasting to the universe that you don't have what you desire. And the universe, being a perfect mirror, reflects back exactly what you're broadcasting, the experience of not having. But here's where it gets disturbing. The more intensely you want something, the more powerfully you're affirming its absence. Your desire becomes a quantum announcement that you exist in a state of lack regarding this specific thing. The emotional intensity you think is helping you manifest is actually the energy signature that repels what you want. Watch this pattern in your own life. The things you want most desperately are the things that remain most elusive. The job you're dying to get never calls back. The person you're obsessing over remains unavailable. The money you desperately need stays just out of reach. Meanwhile, things you're indifferent about seem to show up effortlessly. Opportunities you don't particularly care about fall into your lap. People you're not trying to impress are drawn to you naturally. This isn't coincidence. This is the want trap in action. The mechanism is precise and ruthless. When you want something, you're inherently positioning yourself as separate from it. Want implies distance. Want requires the existence of a wanter and a wanted, a haver and a not haver, a subject desiring an object. This separation creates what quantum physicists call observer bias. Your observation of the quantum field is contaminated by your predetermined expectation of lack. Every thought about what you want reinforces the neural pathway of not having it. Every visualization of your desire strengthens the energetic pattern of its absence. Every affirmation about what you're trying to attract deepens the groove of currently not having it. The very act of trying to manifest something announces to the quantum field that it's not already here. But people who don't care about specific outcomes, they're not generating any interference patterns. Their consciousness isn't contaminated with the frequency of lack. They're not collapsing the quantum field into patterns of separation and not having. They're open, available, transparent to whatever wants to manifest through them. This is why children manifest so easily until they're taught to want things. A child doesn't separate themselves from what they desire. They simply expect it to appear because they haven't learned the adult concept of lack. They haven't been trained to believe that getting what you want requires struggle, effort, worthiness, or special techniques. The want trap operates through your nervous system as much as your mind. When you want something desperately, your body generates stress hormones, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense, your heart rate increases. These are the physiological signatures of emergency, of threat, of something being wrong. Your body is literally broadcasting fear-based, frequencies while your mind is trying to attract what you want. The universe can't distinguish between what you're running toward and what you're running from. It only responds to the frequency you're emitting. When you want something desperately, you're emitting the same fear-based frequency as when you're trying to avoid something you don't want. Both states generate cortisol, both create muscular tension, both signal to your subconscious that you're in danger. This is why the phrase, "be careful what you wish for," contains profound quantum wisdom. What you think you're wishing for isn't what you're actually broadcasting. You think you're asking for money, but you're broadcasting poverty consciousness. You think you're requesting love, but you're transmitting loneliness frequency. You think you're calling in success, but you're emitting failure vibration. The people who manifest effortlessly have stumbled onto a secret they don't consciously understand. They've learned to hold outcomes lightly. They prefer certain results without being attached to them. They have desires without being identified with them. They want things without needing them for their sense of self, security, or worth. This light holding of outcomes isn't indifference, it's something far more sophisticated. It's the ability to want without the desperation that collapses possibilities into lack. It's preference without attachment. It's direction without destination obsession. It's clarity about what you'd enjoy without making your happiness dependent on getting it. But here's the cruel paradox of the want trap. The moment you try to not want something in order to get it, you're still wanting it. Trying to be detached is just another form of attachment. Attempting to not care is caring disguised as strategy. The want trap cannot be escaped through mental manipulation because the trap itself is mental. The people who don't care aren't pretending not to care. They genuinely don't need specific outcomes. For their emotional stability, they haven't trained themselves to be detached. They naturally hold space for multiple possibilities without collapsing into any particular one. They don't use non-attachment as a manifestation technique. They simply exist in a state where their well-being isn't dependent on getting what they want. This state exists prior to wanting. It's not the absence of desire, but the presence of something more fundamental, wholeness. When you experience yourself as complete without needing anything external, desire transforms from desperate grasping into playful preference. Want becomes want to rather than have to. Manifestation becomes exploration rather than survival. The want trap keeps you locked in the very consciousness that creates what you don't want. The experience of being someone who lacks what they desire. Every moment spent wanting something is a moment spent practicing being the kind of person who doesn't have it. Every minute of longing is another minute of training your nervous system to recognize lack as your natural state. But when you observe the want trap without trying to escape it, something shifts. You begin to see that wanting isn't wrong. Unconscious wanting is what creates suffering. Conscious wanting, where you recognize that your happiness doesn't depend on getting what you want, transforms want from prison into playground. The greatest manifestors in history weren't people who suppressed their desires. They were people who held their desires so lightly that the universe had room to give them something even better than what they thought they wanted. They trusted the intelligence of life itself more than their personal preferences. They collaborated with possibility rather than demanding specific outcomes. This is the first key to escaping the want trap. Recognizing that your desperate wanting is not helping you, it's preventing you from receiving what you actually need. Your attachment to specific outcomes is not pulling them toward you, it's pushing them away. Your intense desire is not a sign of how much you care. It's a symptom of how much you believe you lack. You've just discovered that wanting is the poison in your manifestation cup. But if desire kills manifestation, then what about the thoughts you think are helping you? Next, we will prepare yourself, because your mind isn't your manifestation tool, it's your manifestation assassin. What if every thought you think about what you want is actually murdering it in the quantum field before it can be born? This isn't metaphor, this isn't exaggeration. This is the literal process by which your thinking mind commits quantum homicide against your desires every moment of every day. While you've been trying to think your way into manifestation, your thoughts have been systematically destroying every possibility before it can take form in your reality. The mechanism is precise and devastating. Every time you think about what you want, you're collapsing infinite quantum potential into the specific limitation of your current understanding. You're taking the boundless field of possibility and forcing it through the narrow filter of your conceptual mind, killing countless better outcomes in the process. Your mind cannot conceive of anything beyond its current database of experiences, beliefs, and cultural programming. When you think about the money you want, you're limited to amounts and sources that make sense to your rational mind. When you visualize the relationship you desire, you're constrained by your past experiences of love and your cultural conditioning about how relationships should look. When you imagine your ideal career, you're trapped within the boundaries of what seems possible based on your current skills and circumstances. But the quantum field contains possibilities your mind has never dreamed of. There are ways to receive money that you've never heard of, sources of income that don't exist in your current reality, amounts that would seem impossible from your present perspective. There are forms of love available that transcend your concept of relationship, ways of connecting that your mind couldn't construct even in its wildest fantasies. There are expressions of your life purpose that have no equivalent in your current understanding of career or work. Every time you think specifically about what you want, you're murdering these impossible possibilities. You're committing conceptual genocide against solutions that exist beyond the reach of your rational mind. You're performing intellectual abortion on the very manifestations that would serve you most. The process happens faster than you can track it. The moment a desire arises, your mind immediately begins cataloging how it could happen, when it might occur, what it would look like, what it would require. This innocent-seeming analysis is actually the assassination of infinite potential. Each thought about your desire is another limitation imposed on the boundless creativity of the universe. But here's the most disturbing part. The more you think about what you want, the more convinced you become that you know what you want. Your repeated thoughts create the illusion that your desire is clear, specific, and well-defined. But what you think you want is just the poverty version of what's actually available to you. Your mind can only want what it already knows exists. But manifestation at its highest level creates new possibilities that have never existed before. It brings into reality solutions that no one has ever thought of, resources that no one has ever accessed, connections that no one has ever made. These unprecedented manifestations cannot survive the killing field of your analytical mind. This is why people who think obsessively about their desires tend to manifest watered-down versions of what they originally wanted, if they manifest anything at all. Their mental activity has so thoroughly murdered the quantum possibilities that only the scraps remain, the limited, predictable, ordinary outcomes that fit within their conceptual box. Meanwhile, the people who receive miraculous manifestations are often those who held their desires lightly enough that their thinking mind couldn't get a grip on them. They wanted something but didn't spend hours analyzing how it could happen. They preferred certain outcomes but didn't mentally rehearse every detail. They allowed their desires to exist in the undefined space of pure potential rather than the killing field of conceptual analysis. Your thoughts about manifestation are particularly deadly because they're trying to figure out the mechanism. Every time you wonder how your desire will manifest, you're imposing limitations on the infinite creativity of the quantum field. Every time you try to understand the process, you're reducing magic to mechanics. Every time you attempt to make sense of manifestation, you're murdering the very mystery that makes it possible. The quantum field doesn't operate according to your logical understanding. It doesn't follow the cause and effect relationships that your mind considers reasonable. It doesn't manifest through the step-by-step processes that your rational mind finds acceptable. It creates through synchronicity, through impossible coincidence, through seemingly random events that align in ways that defy explanation. But your thinking mind cannot tolerate mystery. It must understand, categorize, explain, predict. And this need to make sense of manifestation is what makes manifestation impossible. The moment you think you understand how something will happen, you've limited it to only happening that way. The moment you figure out the mechanism, you've destroyed the magic. This is why all manifestation techniques eventually fail. They give your mind something to do, something to think about, something to figure out. But that mental activity is the very thing that prevents manifestation from occurring. Every visualization is a limitation. Every affirmation is a boundary. Every technique is a murder weapon aimed at infinite possibility. The people who manifest miracles aren't thinking about manifestation. They're not analyzing their desires or trying to understand the process. They're not visualizing specific outcomes or repeating mental formulas. They're simply aware of what they prefer while remaining open to being surprised by how life delivers it. But your mind will resist this understanding because it threatens the mind's entire sense of purpose. Your ego believes that thinking about what you want is helpful, that analyzing your desires brings clarity, that understanding manifestation gives you power over the process. It cannot accept that its most cherished activity, thinking, is actually the enemy of what it wants to create. The mental suicide happens so automatically that you don't even notice it occurring. The desire arises, and within milliseconds your mind has wrapped it in concepts, limited it with beliefs, strangled it with analysis, and murdered it with understanding. What remains is not your original desire but a corpse, a dead, limited, predictable version of what was once infinite potential. This is why the more you think about something you want, the more impossible it seems to get. Your mental activity is systematically destroying your faith in the possibility by showing you all the reasons it won't work, all the obstacles that exist, all the ways you're not qualified or ready or deserving. Your mind thinks it's being helpful by preparing you for disappointment, but it's actually creating the disappointment it's trying to prevent. The quantum field responds not to your thoughts about what you want, but to your state of being when you're not thinking about what you want. It manifests from the space between your thoughts, from the silence beneath your mental chatter, from the stillness that exists when your analytical mind finally stops its compulsive activity. But achieving this mental stillness isn't a technique you can think your way into. You cannot use thoughts to stop thinking. You cannot analyze your way out of analysis. You cannot figure out how to not figure things out. The very attempt to stop mental suicide through mental effort is just another form of mental suicide. The cessation of thoughts about your desires happens naturally when you recognize that thinking about what you want is not helping you get it. When you see clearly that your mental activity is murdering your manifestations, the mind begins to relax its grip, not through force but through understanding, not through suppression but through recognition. You are not your thoughts about what you want. You are the awareness in which thoughts about what you want appear and disappear. And that awareness, pure, thoughtless, concept-free awareness, is the only space in which manifestation can occur without interference. Now that you understand how your thoughts commit quantum murder, you're probably wondering who or what is doing the thinking. Next, we will brace yourself for the most unsettling revelation yet. The you that wants things doesn't actually exist, and this fake you is the reason your manifestations never come. If you are not your thoughts, not your desires, and not your story, then who is trying to manifest, and what happens when that fake person dies? This question shatters the entire foundation of everything you believe about manifestation, because it exposes the fundamental flaw in every technique, every method, every approach you've ever tried. There is no one there to do any of it. The you that thinks it's manifesting is a construction, a fiction, a mirage that exists only in the realm of concepts and stories. Every manifestation attempt you've ever made has been doomed from the start because you've been trying to get something for someone who doesn't exist. You've been working to improve the life of a phantom, to fulfill the desires of a ghost, to solve the problems of a character in a story that you mistake for reality. The identity that wants things, the self that lacks things, the person that needs things, this entire structure is what prevents manifestation from occurring naturally. Not because this identity is bad or wrong, but because it's not real. And what's not real cannot successfully interact with the quantum field, which only responds to what actually exists. Who you think you are is a collection of memories, beliefs, preferences, fears, desires, and stories woven together into a seemingly coherent sense of self. This psychological construction feels absolutely real because you've been building it and reinforcing it every day of your life. but it has no more substantial existence than a character in a novel or an actor in a play. The memories you use to define yourself happen to a body, but bodies are constantly changing. Not a single cell in your body today existed 7 years ago, yet you maintain the illusion of being the same person who had those experiences. The thoughts you identify with arise and pass away in awareness. But awareness itself never changes, never ages, never accumulates history. The beliefs that form your sense of self were programmed into you by culture, family, education, and experience. They're not discoveries you made about your true nature. They're conditioning you absorbed about who you should think you are. The preferences that seem so personal to you were shaped by genetics, environment, and social influence. The fears that feel so real are mostly inherited anxieties passed down through generations of survival-focused ancestors. Even your desires, the things you want to manifest, don't originate from some authentic self. They're generated by advertising, social conditioning, comparison with others, and the psychological drive to compensate for perceived inadequacies. The person who wants these things is not your true identity, but a programmed response to external stimuli. This false self, this identity construction, is what we've been calling the identity assassin because it murders every possibility for authentic manifestation. It cannot manifest anything genuine because it is not genuine itself. It can only create more of the same illusion, more of the same story, more of the same limitations that define its existence. The identity assassin operates through a simple mechanism. It can only manifest experiences that confirm and reinforce its story about itself. If your identity includes the belief that you're not good with money, you'll manifest financial struggles that prove this belief true. If your sense of self involves being unlucky in love, you'll create relationship experiences that validate this story. If your identity contains feelings of unworthiness, you'll manifest situations that confirm your lack of worth. This isn't punishment or karma or cosmic justice. This is simply how consciousness works. The quantum field cannot give you experiences that contradict your deepest sense of who you are, because those experiences would dissolve the identity, and the identity's primary job is self-preservation. Your false self will sabotage any manifestation that threatens its existence. But here's what makes this situation truly insidious. The harder you try to manifest from this false identity, the more solid and real it becomes. Every technique you practice reinforces the illusion that there's someone there to practice it. Every desire you focus on strengthens the mirage of being someone who lacks what they want. Every manifestation method you apply deepens the conviction that you are a separate self, trying to get something from an external universe. The identity assassin feeds on your manifestation efforts. Each attempt to improve your life gives it more substance, more reality, more power over your experience. The spiritual seeking, the personal development, the endless array of techniques and teachings, all of it serves to make the false self more sophisticated, more convinced of its own reality, more skilled at maintaining its illusory existence. This is why people can study manifestation for decades without ever manifesting anything significant. They're trying to get something for someone who isn't there. They're attempting to improve the life of a character in their own mental movie. They're working to fulfill desires that belong to a psychological construction rather than their authentic being. The death of this false identity isn't something you do, it's something you stop doing. You stop maintaining the story of who you think you are. You stop reinforcing the beliefs that define your sense of self. You stop protecting the image you've constructed of your personal identity. You stop feeding the phantom with attention, energy, and conviction. But this death feels terrifying because the false identity has convinced you that if it dies, you die. It has made itself seem essential to your survival, necessary for your functioning, fundamental to your existence. The ego doesn't understand that what you truly are is indestructible because what you truly are was never born and can never die. What remains when the identity dissolves isn't nothing in the empty sense, it's nothing in the full sense. It's the pure awareness that was always watching the story of your personal life without ever being touched by it. It's the consciousness that observes all experience without being limited by any experience. It's the being that exists prior to all becoming, all changing, all manifestation. This pure being doesn't need to manifest anything because it lacks nothing. It doesn't want to become anything because it's already everything. It doesn't try to get anything because it's the source from which all getting arises. When you recognize yourself as this pure being, rather than the story of a personal identity, manifestation becomes as natural as breathing. But the manifestations that occur from this space of authentic being bear no resemblance to what the false identity thought it wanted. The desires of the ego identity were generated by its sense of lack, its fears, its need to prove itself, its drive to compensate for inadequacy. These desires dissolve along with the identity that generated them. What manifests from pure being is not what you thought you wanted, but what serves the evolution of consciousness itself. Sometimes this looks like what your personality desired, but often it's completely different and always more intelligent, more elegant, more beneficial than anything your limited identity could have conceived. The death of the identity assassin is not a one-time event, but an ongoing dissolution. Every moment you catch yourself believing in the story of being someone separate, someone who lacks, someone who needs to get something, you have the opportunity to release this fiction and rest as what you actually are. The recognition that the you that wants things doesn't exist is not a problem to be solved, but the solution itself. When the phantom self stops trying to manifest, manifestation happens through the transparent medium of what you truly are. When the false identity stops interfering, reality rearranges itself according to its own perfect intelligence. This is not loss but liberation. This is not death but birth. This is not the end of manifestation, but the beginning of manifestation as it was always meant to occur. Not as something you do, but as something you are. You've just witnessed the death of who you thought you were. But here's where it gets strange. In that empty space where you used to be, something impossible begins to happen. Next, we will explore reality starts rearranging itself without any effort from anyone. Welcome to the observer state, where manifestation becomes as natural as breathing. How can watching without wanting, observing without agenda, and being nobody create everything you've ever dreamed of faster than any technique ever could? This question isn't philosophical decoration. It's a quantum mechanical reality that operates in your life every moment, whether you're aware of it or not. Right now, as you absorb these words, the observation effect is determining what possibilities collapse into your reality and which ones remain forever unmanifested. The observation effect begins with a recognition so simple, it's almost insulting to your sophisticated mind. You are not the observer of your experience. You are experience itself, temporarily taking the form of an observer. This isn't wordplay or spiritual rhetoric. This is the actual mechanism by which manifestation occurs at the quantum level. When quantum physicists first discovered that observation changes reality, they assumed the observer was separate from the observed. They maintained the illusion that consciousness was somehow outside the quantum field, looking in and affecting it. But consciousness isn't separate from the quantum field. Consciousness is the quantum field, experiencing itself as both observer and observed, manifester and manifested, creator and creation. Every time you've tried to manifest from the position of being someone who wants something, you've created quantum interference. Your identity as a wanter generates a frequency that repels what you want. Your story as someone who lacks creates a resonance that perpetuates lack. Your belief that you are separate from what you desire maintains the separation energetically. But in the state of pure observation, all these interference patterns dissolve. There's no one there to want, so no wanting frequency is generated. There's no story of lack, so no lack pattern is maintained. There's no sense of separation, so no separation field is sustained. What remains is pure potential, unlimited possibility, infinite creative power expressing without resistance. Here's what happens in the observation state that never happens when you're trying to manifest. Reality rearranges itself spontaneously to match the highest possibility available in the quantum field. Not what you think you want, not what your ego desires, not what your personality believes it needs. The highest possibility that serves the evolution of consciousness itself. This is why people in the observation state seem to manifest miracles effortlessly, while people trying to manifest struggle endlessly. The observer isn't trying to get anything, so there's no resistance to getting it. The observer isn't protecting anything, so there's no energy locked up in defense. The observer isn't maintaining any identity, so there's no pattern that reality must conform to. But achieving this state requires the death of everything you think you are. Every belief about yourself must dissolve. Every story you tell about your past must evaporate. Every identity you've constructed must collapse. Every role you play must disappear. Every opinion you hold must be released. Every preference you maintain must be surrendered. What survives this dissolution isn't nothing in the empty sense. It's nothing in the full sense. The vast, aware, creative emptiness from which all experience arises. This nothing doesn't observe your thoughts. It is the space in which thoughts appear. This nothing doesn't witness your feelings. It is the aware openness in which feelings move. This nothing doesn't create your reality. It is reality creating itself as your experience. In this state, manifestation becomes as natural and effortless as digestion. Your body doesn't struggle to digest food, it simply does what it's designed to do. Your heart doesn't strain to beat, it follows its natural rhythm without interference. Your mind doesn't work to think, thoughts simply arise and pass away in awareness. Similarly, when you're established in pure observation, manifestation simply happens without effort, without technique, without management. But here's where it gets strange. The manifestations that occur in this state often bear no resemblance to what your ego thought it wanted. The observer state doesn't manifest your desires. It manifests what serves the evolution of consciousness through your unique expression. Sometimes this looks like what you wanted. Often it looks completely different, but serves you in ways your personality could never have imagined. This is why techniques fail and observation succeeds. Techniques are based on the assumption that you know what's good for you, that your ego's desires align with your highest good, that getting what you want will make you happy. But the observation state bypasses these assumptions entirely. It allows reality to express its highest intelligence through your life without interference from your limited perspective. The shift into observation isn't something you do. It's something you stop doing. You stop trying to be somebody. You stop maintaining your story. You stop protecting your identity. You stop managing your thoughts. You stop controlling your feelings. You stop directing reality. What remains when all this doing stops is the natural state of pure awareness. And pure awareness is the ultimate manifestation technology. But this scares the mind because the mind exists to maintain the illusion of being somebody. The ego's entire job is to preserve the sense of being a separate self with a personal history and individual desires. When you move into pure observation, the ego experiences this as death because, from its perspective, it is death. The somebody dies and nobody remains. Yet this nobody is infinitely more powerful than the somebody ever was. The somebody could only access their personal power, their individual resources, their limited perspective. But nobody has access to the unlimited power of consciousness itself, the infinite resources of the quantum field, the omniscient perspective of reality as a whole. This is why mystics throughout history have spoken of dying before death, of losing yourself to find yourself, of becoming nothing to gain everything. They weren't speaking metaphorically. They were describing the actual process by which manifestation occurs at the deepest level. In the observation state, you don't manifest things. Things manifest themselves through the transparent medium of your awareness. You don't create experiences. Experiences create themselves in the space of your being. You don't attract circumstances. Circumstances arise naturally from the field of pure potential that you are. This happens because observation without agenda doesn't collapse the quantum field into any particular pattern. Instead, it allows the field to express its highest creative intelligence without interference. The result is manifestation that serves not just your apparent individual good, but the good of the whole system of which you're a part. The transition into this state often feels like losing everything that matters to you, because everything you thought mattered was part of the somebody identity that's dissolving. But what you discover is that nothing real was ever lost because nothing real ever depended on you being somebody in the first place. Your relationships don't need you to be somebody. They flourish when you're transparent to love itself. Your work doesn't require you to be somebody. It flows when you're a clear channel for creative intelligence. Your manifestations don't depend on you being somebody. They appear naturally when you're nobody, interfering with the quantum dance. This is the final secret of manifestation. It's not personal. It never was. The universe doesn't manifest through your personality. It manifests as your personality while you watch from the space of pure awareness. And in that watching, that effortless observation, everything you could ever want or need or dream of manifests with a grace and perfection that no technique could ever produce. The observation effect isn't a method you practice. It's what you are when you stop practicing everything else. It's not a state you achieve. It's what's already here when you stop trying to be somewhere else. It's not something you become. It's what you've always been, beneath the layer of somebody you thought you had to be. Next, we will explore the ultimate question that this realization raises. If you can manifest anything by becoming nothing, what does that make you? And what does that make this reality you thought you knew? But for now, rest in the recognition that the observer reading these words is the same observer through which all manifestation flows. And that observer is not personal, not yours, not separate from the very reality it seems to observe.